What's up? You been feeling weird today? Like maybe buzzing in your head or your body, feeling jittery and anxious, sore or fatigued, tired, just off? Yes. Yes, because we've been having some pretty big Schumann flares for the last week, and today's were pretty big, and I felt them all day. And the thing I've noticed within the past couple of years is that when I feel them that much, there is something really big shifting. And I have seen a couple people, spiritual folks on this app talk about it and how that's going to manifest. I think some people thought it was actually going to manifest in the physical. That's going to take a lot more time because, things shift, moving their way in. So we start on the spiritual layer and it moves in through the mental and the emotional, and last is integrating in the physical. We've been going through these shifts for a long time, for a few years for sure, and every time these Schumann flares happen, it's like we're crossing a threshold. It's like we're walking through a threshold. Now, not everybody is moving through these thresholds, and not everybody is expanding and raising their vibration, and that's a choice. We have that choice right now. There is a lot of old ways of being that we're leaving behind and walking into a new way of being. And I did lay out some cards on this. And I want to talk to you all about that and see what we got down here. So this is the one that fell out first, and it says, your imagination is your connection to the child within. It allows you to see the world with creativity and playfulness, beyond the limitations of what's in front of you. And so what this says to me is people are not happy about having to be adults in the world, and by that I don't mean like have responsibilities and things like that, but have the joy sucked out of them at every angle by oppressive power structures, by unfair power structures and leadership and other situations, inequity in wealth and income. And funny enough, I was seeing posts today about, who was it? There's a guy at Goldman Sachs who was like, oh, as we move forward into the future, we really need to start changing how we tax things so that things are more equitable. Oh, you think? I'll tell you the reason why they're doing that now is because they know if they don't, the pitchforks are coming for them. And this is not something that they've just figured out. They have known this for a long time. And the problem is things are so destabilized in the world at this point, like they can't, if things like really blow up and hit the fan, which they kind of are right now, the problem is, their money doesn't mean garbage. Their money doesn't mean anything. If people are banging down their door and spit roasting them, and I don't mean that in a pleasant way. I mean that in a very literal way. Stab them and roast them or something like that. Eating the rich. This is where we're coming to at this point. People are not happy. People don't have enough. And they understand that the economy is going to crumble. Because it will. You can't rely on a small handful of rich people to prop up an entire economy because they don't consume anything. So now they're all panicking because they see how the world is falling apart. And so now they're like, oh, this is a great idea. Trust me, they've known it all along. They just wanted to see what they could squeeze out of it. Make sure that their lives were comfortable. Anyway, and this is something that we're starting to realize is how rotten that leadership was. But this is something that we've had to go through as a collective and as a species, as humans. You are welcome, worthy, and loved exactly as you are. Every part of your journey is sacred. Everything that we have had to go through and that we are going through is a lesson, is a chance for us to grow, is a chance for us to expand. And, I hate saying it. I hate thinking it. But when we go through these horrible, garbage, oppressive situations, the collective learns what it doesn't want. And I mean the global collective. If you've ever heard about, like, what is it? The macaques that are like, it's on some island in the Caribbean. Anyway, they've found some interesting things where it's like one of them will learn something. It's an isolated population. One of them will learn something like how to use a certain tool, and that knowledge spreads through the collective extremely quickly, even without direct contact. And that's sort of how the global collective works. And I have watched this in action over like the last 10, 15 years. And it's been really interesting to see. But as we all wake up, and I've actually seen a lot of it happen since 2020, from 2019, where people were largely asleep, till the moment the pandemic started, and all of a sudden people who had zero interest in the esoteric and witchcraft and thought it was all stupid, and people who couldn't have given a crap about the fact that I read tarot cards suddenly been like, oh, what do you know about this? Well, a lot, because I've been doing it for a while. That switch has been flipped. That switch was flipped, and it takes a while to catch up because we're talking about a global collective. This has not been pleasant. This has not been easy. We have had to be really brave through all this shnikey garbage, horrible things falling apart and struggling. But I have watched people wake up to toxic patterns of behavior. It is incredible to me how quickly, especially through the pandemic with people online, suddenly everybody understands things like gaslighting, and people understand, like, no, we don't need to tolerate this kind of abusive behavior. I'm not going to say everybody, because there's a lot of people in the world who still benefit from that garbage, manipulation and power games. But the collective is waking up to it. We are waking up to it globally. And unfortunately, it isn't without a lot of conflict. But we are in a phase of rebirth here. It is time to put this crap to an end. And in terms of our inner child, we are understanding how we have been deceived into not nurturing ourselves and each other, into squashing down our hopes and dreams, into destroying our beautiful, creative, playful side, into suppressing our feelings and our individual expression, and the magic in the world, which is something that, boy, when I was a child, I can't even begin to tell you how sad it was. Me desperately looking to find the magic in the world in the 80s, and I could not find it, and it was a different time. It took a while. It started to come back. Creativity here. This is something, it is our responsibility to make the world what we want it. Now, some things are slow to wake up and some things are slow to change. And there are a lot of people resisting this rebirth where we just want to be comfortable in these old power structures. And unfortunately, this is something that we are going to be shook out of. And I think the brachiopods mentioned it in terms of, we have big change when, giant asteroids hit the earth, and giant, changes in development can happen through disaster. And what I can say is this, and this is something that I saw over a decade ago in a vision. It is not as bad as it could have been. And we have done a lot to make a lot of improvements and changes in the world, but things are going to shift in not pleasant ways, and there is going to be destruction in ways that we don't want and don't anticipate. And even within the last couple of years, angels have said to me, it will get worse, before it gets better, but it will get better. And this is what we are waking up to. We're waking up to the truth of things. And we don't want to do this. And that's what was being shaken out of us. When we zoom out from the details of our conflicts, we can see the bigger picture. Every step towards the larger vision, no matter how small, makes a difference. So what this is doing is shaking us out of our individual reveries, our petty infighting, our garbage, finding the problems and nitpicking and the division that we have between us. We are starting to wake up to seeing a larger vision of a better way of life for humanity and for every bit of life on this planet, much like the fossils said the other day. And in order for that to happen, things are crumbling. And it's not pleasant, but change never is. Change and growth is marked by discomfort and often things falling apart and often things crumbling. If we think about the tarot, the tower, when that falls apart, we do still have a foundation there to build on. Change, the death card, sometimes that's very sudden and it takes us in an entirely different direction. But we are waking back up to the magic in the world that was always there, that we were told by garbage religious institutions and white supremacist science and other things. And, don't get me wrong here. I'm not a science denier. My father worked at NASA and my mother was a science teacher. But there is a point where it has become a tool of oppression. And that's not something that we can ignore. Yes, the sky is blue. Yes, I breathe oxygen. Yes, gender and biological sex actually exist on a spectrum and are determined a hell of a lot more, by a hell of a lot more than just chromosomes. And that's scientific fact that nobody seems, certain segments of society don't seem to want to accept. But that is scientific fact. And there's a lot of other things like that out there, but there is more to it than that. If you think that we understand everything and that we can't possibly say, well, there could be more out there, because we can't possibly grasp it with our meaty flesh bag bodies and these very limited eyes. Heaven's sakes, mantis shrimp can see better than we can. We are very limited in what we can view and sense and see. And it is the pinnacle of arrogance to think that these human flesh sacks can determine everything about the vast universe that is multidimensional and multi-layered. But that's what we're waking up to, and boy, is it magical. So we are in this transition, and this is where I have emphasized the message of community and coming together and figuring out ways to work together and coming out of the toxic isolationist bubbles that we have separated ourselves into. There is so much healing that we need to do, but the healing is not going to happen in our individual bubbles. It is going to happen together. So, boy, it's a mess out there. It is a mess out there. Can I get... Oh, here's that one card. Mindfulness. This is a good place to start. And mindfulness is about this present moment, not worrying about the future, not ruminating on the past, but really being present in this moment with who we are, what we can do, what we can't. We cannot change everything in this moment. We can't. But we can still be present every moment of every day and do what it is that we need to do, moving through every moment of every day. What can I do now? What can I do next? Not, I can't possibly change the world by myself. Of course you can't. Start small and start together by connecting together. And we can move mountains that way. This was a very interesting channeled message. But I hope that helped somebody out there, gave you all a little direction. Well, that's all. Love you. Bye.